All right, welcome back into the Stadium Seat Sports YouTube channel. As always, I am Coop here with my partner and co-host Crib. And Crib, listen, man, we got an absolute treat last night in the national championship game here. I know it was looking ugly there for a second for Notre Dame, but give them credit, they did what they did all year. If they were not jumping out on teams, if they were equally matched talent wise or a little bit overmatched talent wise, they clawed and they fought their way back like they had done all year. So give them credit. It's a tribute to their toughness and to the culture within that program. So I'm going to throw it over to you to get your recap, and we'll do some back and forth here. But I wanted to just say a couple of things before I throw it over to you. First and foremost, absolute credit to both teams on making it to the national championship game. It's a huge accomplishment, especially in this new world of college football with the 12 team football playoff format that we now have. Like, that is not an easy feat to do so. And we'll touch on this a little bit more. But both teams should be extremely proud. And I think when it comes to Notre Dame, and I'll kind of touch on this a little bit more when I kind of give my insight, but they got nothing to hang their heads about. They had an incredible season. They can be really happy with the coaching staff they have in place there, with the culture they have in place there, with what the players did this year. And in saying that they can be happy with that, doesn't mean that they're satisfied with the result last night. In fact, they shouldn't be satisfied with the result last night. But that's what makes Notre Dame to me. Like, they're a perennial powerhouse. They are college football royalty, a blue blood, just like Ohio State. So that kind of disappointment is going to be hopefully what takes that program to the next level. So an incredible season for them, nothing to hang their heads on, but now they have just that extra chip on their shoulder, that extra bit of motivation to just get to the apex of college football. And then for Ohio State, incredible job, incredible resiliency after that final loss of the regular season against Michigan. Ryan Day and his football team just showed everybody what we all thought that they were capable of being when coming into this year, when they were pretty much the perennial favorites, right up there with Georgia entering the season. So I just wanted to kind of throw those things out there because I think that you'll probably touch on some of those points, and then I'll touch on them a little bit more here. But both programs should be incredibly happy with the seasons that they had. And so I want to get your thoughts on the game and kind of the outcomes for both programs now moving forward.
Yeah, so like you said, incredible end of the year, and of course, full disclosure, clearly an Ohio State fan. I tried not
Yeah.
to wear that on my sleeve, so to speak,
Yeah.
during the season, but with a championship, I'm making an exception here. So
Yeah. Hey, listen, man. You and I are both Ohio State fans here. We got a right to be happy, a right to celebrate. But yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with you. We try to not, let any kind of biases come into play because we want to, we evaluate college football without any biases. But yeah, go Bucks. Let's just say that right
yeah,
off the
yeah.
bat, man.
So
Great job last night, fellas.
absolutely, and so yeah, I think you hit on a lot of really good points here. Uh, I mean, both teams kind of had a major low point in each of their seasons.
Mhm.
NIU loss for Notre Dame, and then of course Ohio State losing to the team up north right
Yep.
before the playoffs. And both teams could have just packed up shop and called it quits, but neither did.
Sure.
Both teams kind of galvanized around that. Notre Dame had the longest win streak in the nation coming into that game.
Yep.
Ohio State obviously lost that game and then became a monster after that.
Mhm.
So kudos to both teams. I mean, the new format was made for these kind of teams,
Yep.
and they took full advantage of that opportunity, even though you can argue Ohio State had a harder path, but both teams
Sure.
beat some really good teams. I mean, beating Georgia and Penn State to make it to the title is very impressive. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's a great run for
and,
Notre
and
Dame.
and it's something that until this playoff, Notre Dame notoriously would make the playoffs and get destroyed. So,
Yeah. I
they
mean,
they they've made great strides. So,
mhm.
but this game was very interesting in the fact that the way it started,
Yeah.
Notre Dame came out there and punched Ohio State in the mouth very hard.
Yep.
Um, in fact, I think in a way, they spent every physical ounce of ability they had on that drive, and it took them
Yeah.
a while to catch their breath like after that.
Hmm.
So Leonard ran the ball 9 times, 30, I
Yep.
think 34 yards. Um, Ohio State had no answer for it, and they got right down the field, 10-minute drive, and it's like, oh boy, that was 10 minutes. Ohio
Yep.
State already down, and there's not a lot of time left already.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
then
that was the game plan Notre Dame
yeah,
needed to execute, and
and
they
in
did it to a T on
yeah,
that first drive.
and actually, I would say they did it well most of the game,
Yeah.
even when they were behind. The problem was, what was it, the first 3 or 4 drives? Ohio State scored every single time.
I think it was five. I think it was five drives in a
Okay,
row
yeah,
because
yeah, the field goal at the end.
they had three
Yeah,
touchdowns, a field goal, and then another touchdown to start the third quarter because they got the ball to come out. So I think it was
yeah,
five drives in a row. They came
yeah,
away with
yeah.
points.
So that that doesn't happen, right?
Right.
Because if Notre Dame does that, takes up 10 minutes, Ohio State even answers that first one, and Notre Dame has another 5 to 10 minute drive.
Right.
But every single time Notre Dame, after that first touchdown won, they had what, multiple 3-and-outs. And
Hmm.
then every time Ohio State got the ball, they had nice methodical drives.
Yep.
It wasn't the quick hitters.
Right.
And they got that lead. And I think one, Will Howard played great. Obviously, the way he started the game was incredible.
Yes. It was 16 of 16, I think.
I think it was 14 to
Or
14, but
was it 14 to
regardless,
14?
it
Yeah.
was the highest. I think he ended the half with the highest completion percentage in college football playoff history.
Yeah. The
Um,
guy was an absolute monster, not just in this game, but in in every playoff game. Like he
yeah,
was incredible.
yeah,
Incredible.
he has moxie, as they say.
Hmm.
The guys love him. I mean, he made himself into a Buckeye in such a short time.
Yep.
That locker room with the bunch of guys who've been there 3, 4, or 5 years, they look to him as a leader and they love him, and you could see that
Yeah.
on the field. But
Yeah.
his accuracy was top notch. He converted a lot of big third down plays.
Hmm.
Even that touchdown at the end of the half where he took off scrambling. They came in after him, and he found Judkins right in the middle
Yeah.
of the end
That
zone.
was an incredible uh just spur of the moment, absolute, gut play by Howard there. Like
Yeah,
that was not a designed play. That was Will Howard making the most out of a situation where whatever the initial call was not available. Like that was probably to me, that was his most impressive play in that game. And he had a
yeah,
lot of them, but
yeah.
that was incredible.
So yeah, I mean, so all that being said, I mean, the play call, the touchdown pass to Jeremiah Smith, where he was wide open. A lot of these third down conversions, a lot of these run plays. Chip Kelly was had them off balance all game. And
Yeah.
it really showed how well they were prepared for this. And Notre Dame almost seemed shocked how well they were responding to what they thought was a good game plan.
Hmm.
But with that being said, we said before the game that in order for Notre Dame to win, they had a very, very narrow path, and
Hmm.
that was penalties on Ohio State and
Yep.
turnovers. And
Hmm.
after they go up 31-7, the penalties start happening. Davis
Yep.
Igbenogson has a couple pass interference calls. I think
Yep.
Jordan Hancock had another one.
He did.
Um,
And his was, he had two, but the one that kept the one Notre Dame drive alive
yeah, it was third
was
and
not even, it was an amazing play by Denzel Burke.
yeah,
He tackled his defender,
yeah,
Jordan Hancock, that
yeah,
was, which was what
yes,
that was called on.
yeah,
Initially, they said Caleb Downs, but it was Jordan Hancock.
yeah, yeah,
And then on the incredible Faison touchdown catch, he got called for interference too, but Faison made an incredible play
yeah.
and it just canceled out because they scored a
And
touchdown.
and the first penalty was on a 3rd and 23, and Igbenogson got that first PI there. And so
Hmm.
those penalties started to happen. Uh, Notre Dame scores, converts two, they score, convert two, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden we're in a one possession game. Obviously, Ohio State was also about to put them away again on that
Yep.
Emeka Ibuka reverse,
Hmm.
and great play by Notre Dame. The plays they've
Yeah. It
made
was an
all
amazing punch out.
they've been doing stuff like that all season, and they get the punch out, and it's like, oh boy, like here we go.
Yep.
This Notre Dame team started to feel all of a sudden a lot like that. We mentioned it before, but like the 2002 Ohio State team,
Hmm.
that
It was
just a
like a
team of
team of
destiny,
destiny.
where like
Yeah.
these bounces are happening, and all of it, it just felt like Notre Dame had all the momentum.
Mhm.
And you go to that final drive, and it's Will Howard. He's out there with no running backs. They bring
Yep.
in Patrick Gurd, who's a fullback, tight end guy, and they just telegraph quarterback runs on the first two plays. And
Yep.
you're like, holy, like this.
Like they're just trying to run the
Right?
clock
Well,
out, but
well,
they don't trust this offense, right?
well. It
Like,
makes no sense. You have Judkins who ripped things off all game.
yep.
Travion Henderson, who had a solid game, but I mean he's a home run hitter,
Right.
and they put the ball in Howard's hands on two plays, and then it's 3rd and 11, uh, and they put one guy on Jeremiah Smith, a freak of nature, an alien,
Yep.
and they send a big heavy blitz, and Ohio State does a great job picking that up, and I don't know if you caught it, but Travion Henderson made maybe the block of the year.
Yeah.
He plugged
Yep.
that blitz
Yep.
and got him that time. And of course, the rest is history. And um, they're able to run the ball a few times, get the clock down, hit that field goal, go up 11, and ultimately win.
Yep.
Um, so, but I will say this: I think Riley Leonard played the best game I've ever seen him play,
Yeah.
and
He played great.
it
He
wasn't just
played
running the
great.
ball. He made great passes. The first half, he was
Hmm.
missing guys. The second half, he was dropping it in a bucket.
Yep.
He made throws that you don't typically see from him. And it was his effort and just it was awe inspiring, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
he left everything on that field.
Yep. I
Um,
think that Notre Dame football team and Riley Leonard, they embody what their head coach is. And
yeah,
that's smart, tough, gritty in Marcus Freeman. And I think that you saw that on full display, not just in this postseason, but last night is the most fresh in my memory, obviously, because we just watched that game. But it's a team that you could tell them they're going to lose this game 10 out of 10 times
yeah,
to Ohio State. They don't care. They're going
yeah.
to come out there and they're going to play their absolute you know what's off. Like
Yeah,
they are just the epitome of a tough, drag it out, do not give up football team. And,
it's never over against them. But I
right.
will say I have two major criticisms for Notre Dame.
Sure.
One
I at least
being,
know one of them.
yeah, one being the field goal attempt
Yep.
made no sense. It was
Mm-hmm.
a two-score game, 16 points.
Yep.
You're within the 10-yard line.
Yep.
You're in great position. Just go for it. And we know
It's still
they,
a two-score possession, even if you hit that field goal. It's still
yeah,
13.
yeah, and we
Like,
know, yeah, exactly. You kicked you were kicking a field goal to do the two-score game to be a two-score game.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I understand getting two touchdowns, two extra points is tough, but you have to get a touchdown anyway, and you're right there. So
Right. It's not like
um,
you're going from 19 to 16 where you're like three possession game, two possession
yeah,
game. Like
you need two
you
touchdowns.
need two touchdowns regardless. So
Yeah,
yes, I fully agree with you.
yeah,
I'm interested on the second one because I
yeah.
it's not coming to my mind right now,
So
but I'm sure when you say it.
I don't know if this was injury related or not, uh, and also just in general, but Jeremiah Love getting 4 carries
Mhm.
makes no sense to me. I mean,
Well, you know,
right?
also on Jeremiah Love on that play where they kicked the field goal, he was wide open on third down. Riley
Yeah,
missed him. He was going to waltz in the end zone for a touchdown. I don't know if
yeah,
you saw it in real time. I had to like go back and see it because somebody had mentioned it. Love was wide open. He like
yeah.
that's where they kicked it, ended up kicking the field goal and obviously missing it. That was one moment for Riley Leonard where I will say that was a momentous moment. Like that would have altered the game potentially for Notre Dame there. But yeah, I agree with you. 4 touches, like we knew Love was banged up, but he had said like I'm close to 100% coming into this game. He had 4 touches.
And listen, I know they fell behind, but I think
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason they fell behind was they burned out Riley Leonard early with those
Yeah.
9 carries, and then they still kept going through him after that, and it wasn't working anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
they just seemed to abandon Love and Price, and um, I just I personally think they should have leaned on them a bit more. I don't maybe Jeremiah Love's injury was worse than he said. Before the game, he said he was 95%. So,
Right. Like
and
he
he,
was
and he,
essentially I'm close to
yeah,
100%.
and there was no knee brace this game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't quite get it. But yeah, and then of course the fake punt,
Yeah.
everyone knew it was coming. And
Right.
they actually could have converted that.
Yeah.
he was open. So
Wasn't a fantastic throw, but like it was convertible.
yeah,
Like it could have
so
been caught.
I like their aggression there. I just don't know what happened to the aggression down in the end zone.
Mhm.
And honestly, they had two great plays drawn up for their 2-point conversions.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
And it was like you're telling me you didn't have. I know that it wasn't as close to the goal line on
Yeah, it
that
was
fourth
fourth and
down,
nine.
but
It was fourth and goal from the 9, I think.
they clearly have a good playbook for these
Hmm.
situations. So that was disappointing. That was like a play not to win type thing, and that was out of character for him in that moment.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think, like you said, Notre Dame took on Marcus Freeman's persona. The culture is very real at Notre Dame.
for sure.
And yeah, hats off to them. I mean, they had a chance at the end, and
Yeah.
that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. And I mean, look, if I'm buying stock in a few college football programs, Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman and some coaching staffs are absolutely one of those programs. Like truthfully, if I'm buying stock in belief that this team and this program are going to have success in this 12 team playoff and beyond, Marcus Freeman and this Notre Dame football program are solidified absolutely in my mind as one of those teams I would buy stock in. Like
Yeah,
that's how highly I think of this Notre Dame program, the culture that they have, and Marcus Freeman as a head coach.
yeah,
And so,
they're going to return a lot of
yeah,
guys next year,
yeah,
and CJ Carr is going to be their quarterback probably. So
mhm.
they're going to be
They've
another
got some
they're
guys.
going to be a force.
Yeah,
And
they've got some dudes. And I said this in the intro before throwing it over to you, where I was like, Notre Dame fans, Notre Dame players, the coaching staff, they can be incredibly proud of the season that they had. They can be incredibly proud of the culture that they have at that program, but also not be satisfied with the result. They shouldn't be satisfied with the result because
yeah,
they are
they're right
one of
there.
the top teams in college football year in and year out. And so this is motivation to reach that kind of peak of college football. You were right
Yeah,
there. You were at the top of the mountain. You just didn't quite reach the peak last night.
yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't. In fact, I feel very strongly that Marcus Freeman and this Notre Dame team will reach that peak at some point here over the coming years. And you look at a team like Ohio State, who reached at the peak of the mountain for the first time since 2014, that Urban Meyer National Championship team, where they defeated the Oregon Ducks after defeating the Alabama Crimson Tide in the semifinal game in the inaugural 14 college football playoff. Well, over these 10 years, Ohio State, and I'm not saying it's going to take Notre Dame 10 years to potentially win a national title, but over these 10 years, from title to title for Ohio State, there was some heartbreak
There's
situations,
a lot of
not just
heartbreak.
losing to Michigan 4 times in a row. Remember that game, semifinal game in the Mercedes Benz Superdome,
Yeah,
or Mercedes Benz Stadium, whatever it's called,
yeah.
against Georgia a few years ago. Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. gets knocked out of the game. Kirby Smart calls the timeout right before Ohio State converts a fourth down. Like there is a lot of ways with which Ohio State wins that game, and they don't win that game.
Yep.
And then obviously, if Ohio State wins that game, I think we both feel pretty strongly they go on to the national championship and beat TCU handily like Georgia did.
Yep.
So you have a lot of different scenarios for Ohio State that I think you could compare this one to Notre Dame for last night, where it's like you came up short, you had some heartbreak, you take that heartbreak and you turn it into achieving your ultimate goal. Like I think Notre Dame can absolutely do that. They are not far off. They're not. And I know this game was 31-7. And I do think we were texting back and forth during the game. Ohio State took their foot off the brake. They took their throat, foot
Yeah.
off Notre Dame's throat, so to speak, where they got more conservative. They were running not really their elite
It,
style of offense, just trying to
it
kind of run out the game.
it was also like a prevent defense too. They were just like
Yeah.
they gave up 5 yards every play, and it's like, well,
Yep.
they're gonna get downfield on you. So
Right. Well, and you're down 31-7, so they're going to go for it on fourth down unless it's like fourth and 15 from like their 25, like they're
yeah,
going for it, right?
yeah.
So I think Ohio State got a little bit conservative, and Notre Dame is that kind of team that's tough. They're gritty. They've got some really talented dudes on that team. They've got a phenomenal coaching staff. Like if you give them momentum, watch out. And it was almost a watch out moment for Ohio State. But
Very
I
nearly.
think, yeah, exactly. And I think the world of Marcus Freeman, I think the world of this Notre Dame football team, they've got nothing to hang their heads on. They've got a lot of great talent coming back. I think they've got an incredibly bright future. With Marcus Freeman as the head coach at Notre Dame, I would not be shocked to see Notre Dame back in the title game and potentially hoisting that trophy in the next 5 years. It would not surprise me, truthfully. Um, and now I'm going to go to the other side, the victors. That's who we should talk about.
Yep.
It's who we should kind of focus on at this point. Uh, we sent out a tweet last night on our Twitter account, just congratulating Ryan Day and the Ohio State football program for showing incredible poise, resiliency after suffering what felt like maybe one of the lowest moments in the last several decades in Ohio State football program history, after suffering that end of the season loss to the Michigan Wolverines. Like, this team, this coaching staff deserves so much credit for keeping things internal and being like, we're not going out like that. Like, this legacy is not the legacy we're leaving at Ohio State. And you saw it all throughout the postseason. And this is what I loved the most from Ryan Day, this coaching staff, and this Buckeye football team. You beat the brakes off of Tennessee. We got 3 more games.
Yeah.
This one doesn't matter. The win's great. It's not what we're about. You absolutely kicked the teeth in of the Oregon Ducks in the Rose Bowl. We got 2 more games. Like, they never lost that laser focus. And I think that that's what's most impressive, because sometimes it can be easy to get complacent where you're like, we just beat the brakes off of 2 phenomenal teams. Like, no one's beating us. Like, they kept that chip on their shoulder. They kept their eyes focused on the ultimate prize, which was winning the national championship. And Ryan Day, these players talked about it, said, you can cement your legacy in Ohio State football history as one of the best teams in this historic program's history, but you have to win the whole thing. You win 3 of these games and you make it to the title game, none of that matters.
Yep.
Like, you won those bowl games, you'll have those trophies. It's great. None of that matters when it comes to the ultimate goal for this Ohio State football team. So they deserve so much credit. And for Ryan Day, man, look, we both mentioned it at the beginning of this podcast. We're both Ohio State fans. I think both of us had extreme skepticism after that Michigan loss that Ryan Day was the correct guy for this job. Like, we will both be open and honest about that.
Yeah.
Like, we did not have a lot of faith in regards to him being the right guy for this job, being able to win the big games, being able to lead Ohio State back to the promised land.
Yep.
And I can proudly sit here on our podcast, as can you, and say I couldn't be happier to be wrong.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I was wrong. You were wrong. All these other people who had the same sentiment about Ryan Day, we were wrong. It doesn't mean that the sentiment of losing to Michigan was wrong. Like, he still has to right that ship at some point in time, but him having the ability and winning a national championship and showing I can go on the greatest run in college football history on the way to a title is also true.
So I think one, I mean, hats off to Ryan Day. I mean, he proved me wrong. I used to be the biggest Ryan Day supporter, and then that game on November 30th was the breaking point for me, where it's like, man, I don't know if I can keep supporting him, because it just felt like we had run our course.
Yeah, he says all the right things. He's a phenomenal recruiter, a phenomenal leader of men, from what people in that locker room and program say. But he wasn't winning the one that means the most when you're an Ohio State Buckeye.
And I think the streak to win the championship was incredibly impressive. I mean, imagine telling someone you beat Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame, 4 straight games. That sounds insane. Those are like 4 powerhouse, like,
Ohio State
blue
beat
bloods
5
and
top 5 teams.
Yeah. Well,
this season.
And I think so. One, that is absolutely incredible. And Ryan Day, like, he has earned all the respect you can never ask for. I know he still has to figure out the Michigan game.
Yep, I agree.
But doing what he did validates him and says, hey, he is the right guy.
Yeah.
But also that run validates our thoughts after November 30th that maybe he wasn't the right guy, because we knew that this team talent and just roster was the best in the country. And there was no reason for them to lose that game and only score 10 points. And seeing those last four games, that just validates it because
Correct.
there's no reason that you could win those four games and not beat that Michigan team. So,
Fully
um,
agree.
so that I know it sounds crazy, but he proved people right in a sense
Hmm.
that he should have won that game, and he knows he should have
Yeah,
won that.
for sure.
And then just one last thing. I think the biggest I don't think but honestly like I don't think they win the title if they won that Michigan game.
I don't disagree with you.
I
I think that
think
that Michigan game was the catapult that they needed and the wake up call to be like, are we really going to go out like this? Like
yeah.
that lit a fire within this
Yeah.
program that burned college football, the rest of the college football
Yeah,
field to the ground.
I don't think
Like,
I don't think they get that fire if that doesn't happen. They got an
yeah.
edge after that. They had a team meeting. And honestly, the team changed. They played way different. Like that energy they
Hmm.
played with was crazy. But the biggest thing I saw, and obviously we uh, pay pretty close attention to Ohio State,
Yeah.
and they put out these videos of each game, and you hear Ryan Day's speeches, and
Yeah.
it felt like the last few years the speeches never felt sincere.
Yeah.
They
They
felt
didn't feel like they had juice to
I didn't
them.
believe him. I didn't
Hmm.
believe him when he would yell. But when he was giving these speeches, it seemed like it seemed authentic,
Yeah.
and
I agree with you.
it seems to me like he finally figured out he has to be true to himself. He is not
Hmm.
Urban Meyer. He's not Jim Tressel. He is Ryan Day, and
Yep.
he has a different personality. He loves his players, and you could see it on the sideline. He was pushing guys around,
Yeah.
like grabbing them. He didn't do that all the time.
Like before this postseason, we
Yeah,
hadn't seen that Ryan Day
yeah,
since that Georgia game we mentioned.
yeah,
Like
and
that was the Ryan Day where like, damn, that's the guy.
that yeah,
That's the guy.
and we have been begging to see that, and
Hmm.
it sucks. It took a devastating loss, but
Hmm.
I truly believe he found himself,
Yeah.
and the team galvanized around that. It was
Yep.
no more BS. It was no more rah rah. We're the toughest people out here. He found he found himself. The team found him, and he said this is the closest team he's ever coached.
Yep.
Um, and that it comes with adversity that you get to that point. But he found himself,
Yep.
and
And now listen, he's got to figure out the Michigan game. We talked about that.
yeah,
He's a Buckeye legend. He is one of five Ohio State
yeah.
coaches with a national championship to his name.
Now
Like,
don't get me wrong. Like Tressel and Urban, they'll only have one championship too. So he's on par with them
yeah,
on championships.
correct.
But like we said, the biggest difference here is Urban was 7-0 against Michigan. I
Hmm.
think Tressel was 9-1.
Yeah.
Maybe even 10-1 if you count the vacated win for the
Yeah.
tattoo scandal, which
Yeah.
by today's standards wouldn't even be anything. But that's a whole nother story.
Correct. Yeah.
But that's the biggest difference right now. But I truly I think we'll see it next year.
Hmm.
There's gonna be a weight off Ryan Day, and
Yeah. I fully agree.
if he's coaching free and being himself,
Hmm.
um, that Michigan game could look very different. So
Yeah, I agree. And look, I just want to quickly touch on this because Ohio State is one of the most successful schools in terms of navigating this new world of college football with NIL. But we heard all year long about Ohio State's $20 million roster, this, Ohio State's $20 million roster, that. There's a lot of college football teams that spent similar amounts to Ohio State. And to me, yes, they brought in some incredible players. They brought in Caleb Downs from Alabama. They brought in Julian Sayin, who will be the starter next year for Ohio State. They
yeah,
brought in Quinshon Junkins, who was incredible for Ohio State, not just in the game last night, but all season long. Will Howard from Kansas State. Like they did bring in some guys, but a vast majority of this Ohio State team was juniors and seniors who ended up foregoing the NFL draft this past year, all of whom would have been selected in round
yeah,
1, 2, 3, what have you. There's a vast majority of this Ohio State football, junior and senior class that ended up returning because they were like, this is not what we want our Ohio State legacy to be. We came here to win national championships and we want to win a national championship. Jack Sawyer, JTT, Travion Henderson, Emeka Igbuka, all of these guys. Like Ohio State's transfer players in should get a lot of credit. Like they balled out for Ohio State this year, both in the regular season and in the postseason. But the returning starters, the guys who, gave up their dream of playing in the NFL for one more year to come back and return, also deserve an incredible amount of acknowledgement and credit for this Ohio State run. And I couldn't be happier for the entirety of the team, but especially for guys like Igbuka, JTT, Jack
Yeah.
Sawyer,
Yeah.
Travion Henderson, like guys who have gone through some really painful moments at Ohio State in terms of like coming up short in what their expectations are. Big Ten championships, beating Michigan, winning national championships. Like last night was validation, I think, for those guys that like we freaking did it. And
Yeah.
we came back and we achieved the goal that we set out to achieve. Ohio State players talked about it in the beginning of the season, in the preseason. Denzel Burke mentioned it's like it's natty or bust. Like that is our expectation this year. And you know what? Through all the adversity, they did it. And this group, Ryan Day, this coaching staff should be incredibly proud of just the absolute dog mentality and resiliency it took to come back from the lowest of low points to reach the highest of high points in a
Absolutely.
matter of 2 months, essentially. Difference
Yeah.
between the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. So for Ohio State, man, I'm incredibly happy for them as a program. I think that they're always at the top of college football in terms of expectations. They're always normally residing within the top five in college football year in and year out. But I agree with you. I think that this does take a significant amount of pressure off of Ryan Day. We mentioned it. He does still need to figure out the Michigan game, but hopefully with a natty under his belt. I mean, John, listen, unless I'm remembering incorrectly, Ryan Day now is one of three active FBS head coaches that has a national title. It's Ryan
Yeah.
Day, it's Kirby Smart, and Dabo Sweeney.
Yep.
Like he is in very rare air. Like he is in elite territory. And it's not easy to win a national championship. And we've talked about it multiple times on this show because it just is such a true point that we like to get it across. Like Nick Saban, what he did at Alabama ruined people's expectations of what we view as an elite program, a great
Well,
coach. Like,
even Nick Saban lost to Auburn and won a championship, and he
correct.
said, "No one remembers I lost to Auburn that year because we
Yeah,
won the championship."
right.
And it's crazy because college football rivalries do mean so much.
Mm-hmm.
But he is right because I mean, there's no better feeling than winning the championship. And
Correct.
if you lose your rival, that stings. But in this new college football world, you can redeem yourself,
Yep.
and they did, and they washed the taste of that loss away, and
Mm-hmm. In the
um,
best way possible.
yeah, the only way you could possibly wash it away.
Yeah.
So
And I just want to say this, like, this is, I think, like, you would be in agreement with this. I think everybody realistically who has a viewpoint of what just happened would have an agreement with what I'm about to say, which is this is the most well-deserved national championship uh, of all time in my eyes. And what I mean by that is, yes, Ohio State stubbed its toe twice in the regular season, but in getting into this 12-team football playoff field, they didn't have like a Penn State path. They didn't get to play SMU, then Boise State, then Notre Dame, and then the team from the other side of the bracket in the national title. You would still take a national championship. There's no disregard, like there's no questioning that, right? But the
yeah,
fact that Ohio State had to go through Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and then Notre Dame
yeah,
is as hard of a schedule and gauntlet as you could possibly go through. And that's why I think this is so validating for Ohio State, because after that ugly end of the season loss to Michigan, you could make an argument that, like, if Ohio State got in the 14 college football playoff, well, did they really deserve to be there? Like, they had to beat one or two teams on their way to a national championship. If it was the BCS era, obviously, in looking at it, they wouldn't have been there. But let's just say that they are, for hypothetical, speak. They just win one game, they're national champions. Like in this 12-team college football playoff field, they get in and they get rewarded essentially with the hardest path you can possibly take to win the national championship. And they did just that. And not only did they beat every team that resided in the final poll's top eight except for Georgia. And the
yeah,
average margin of victory, 15 and a half points was the average margin of victory Ohio State had over all of those teams when
yeah.
compiled altogether. Like that is an incredible stat. So that's just what I wanted to end it with here is just this is an incredibly well-deserved national championship. Ohio State was not gifted anything. They were given a chance in this new college football playoff format, which they should have been given. And they went on to prove that yes, they are and were the best team in college football this year. When
Yeah.
they play to their level, what they're capable of, they are the best team in college football. And they proved that and then some. So huge shout out to them, to Ryan Day. I think just a momentous moment for him, for this program moving forward. I think they're going to have an incredible amount of success. And hey, look, we're going to do more videos, obviously, but Ohio State and Texas play week one of the 2025 college football season in Columbus.
Yeah.
There's a very real shot that that's 1 versus 2 in the first week of the college football season next year. Like there's a real shot that Ohio State and Texas are 1-2 going into next year. So that's going to be an incredible game. I can't wait for that. Guys, as always, thank you so much for listening to any of our episodes here. Drop a like, a subscription, leave us your thoughts on the national championship game and the 2024 season as a whole. Really bittersweet that the college football season is over with at this point in time. Definitely sad. We're going to have, what is it? I think like 6 months, 7 months, whatever it is, without college football here. In terms,
Spring practice six weeks away. So
yeah,
right
spring
back at
practice,
it.
and then not we're far off. I think like August 28th or something like that for
Yep.
the first games. But an incredible season, filled with highs and lows for a multitude of programs. So hope you guys enjoyed the season as much as we did. And we'll be back, like we talked about, with some additional college football videos and some videos beyond the college football sphere as well. So anything you want to say before we hop off?
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks, baby.